All right. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Love is the love and the will.
All right. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We are joined by Brother Felipe Bustos, and he is going to present on the. So, if I understand correctly, it's not necessarily the magic of maize, it's the use of maize as an oracle. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, my apologies for that miscommunication. But it still looks cool to write MMM. All right. So with no further ado, go ahead and take it away, bro.
Okay. I'm going to. Okay, I'm going to present my screen. Okay, you can see it, right?
Yeah, I can see it perfectly.
Okay. This talk is about mainly the oracle of Maize, but I need to explain a few concepts of the Mesoamerican thought, and one of them, the most important, is the Chicawalisli, which is the life force and has to do with the oracle because it retrieves the life force to the consultant and the shaman. And I'm going to use this word shaman as a generic way to call the healers of the Mesoamerican tradition. I'm Felipe Bustos Gonzalez. Um, I'm the body master of Azur Gemado, the encampment in Jalapa, Mexico. And this is part of my research of this uh, Maize oracle. And I'm trying to be really concise about this since we have an hour. So I'll try to hurry a bit. This is an example of the paliacate for reading. The one in the middle is my first attempt, and the one at the sides are the latest example, and the one at the right, it's an example of how you would see the maize uh, falling on the paliacate. So this is the first part about the four corners of the world, since the oracle has four corners. This is Sinteotl, the Zapotec version of it. And this image is guarded by the person who taught me how to read corn. He's a very dear friend, and this is the corn that I used to read with. The objective of this talk is to talk about traditional medicine, some diseases that are traditionally known in Mexican culture. It is about therapy and restitution of tradition, about the cultural trauma and learning this oracle through its symbols and symbology. As the exordium of Palpom says, I'm going to explain to you how my heart felt in the ancient times. So you see the structure of the oracle. It has concentric circles and has four parts. And we could make an analogy with the Altepetl, which has the same structure. The Altepetl is the way the Mesoamerican people thought about the cosmic, social, and geographical order. And it comes from in Tepetl, which is the water, the mountain. And this is representation of the Altepetl. It is a complex representation of the Altepetl. Here is Tlaloc inside a temple in a hill that has water inside. So this Altepetl has a central axis, and we're going to see what is exactly the Altepetl in the geographical plane and the political plane, so we can understand a little about the structure of the oracle. So the Altepetl is an urban center, a seat of civic power, and the territory that is governed by a city and even a rural area. And we have neighborhoods around the hill inhabited by families. It has rulers. The main ruler is the Tlatoani, has a temple, has um, when you have several Altepetl which join together because of political reasons, you get a way Altepetl, which is a great Altepetl. It is uh, Monte Alban in Oaxaca was one example of that, that they built um, a city on a hill because they knew they needed to join forces and build a capital. So the geographical requirements and military requirements are that you need to have a mountainous landscape, a hydrological basin, sky reference elevations. You see the maps in Mesoamerica from the colonia, from the conquest of Mesoamerica by the Spaniards from 1521 to the 1800s, had this kind of maps that they needed to localize the places according to the elevations. Um, so I'm going to explain more that this is a picture, an example, which is the Altepetl of Mestitlan. And you will see that we have a valley which has all this fertile land that you can have agriculture there, and you have all these hills that are protecting this productive basin, and there are several towns on the hills that can see if foreign people come and try to pass through Mestitlan. Um, this is another view, a drawing of Mestitlan, and you can see like a cut that shows where are the resources and the glyph of Mestitlan, which comes from the Nahuatl Mestli, which is moon, and the Itlan preposition that is between. So Mestitlan means amongst the moon or in the middle of the moon. And this is, I wanted to explain or exemplify the Altepetl with Mestitlan because it was never part of of the of the Aztec Empire. It was never conquered, and then it fell by the hands of the Spaniards. So this place, since it joined the Spaniards to defeat the the central power of the of the Aztec Empire, then had some privilege after that, but we can talk about this situation later, since this is just an example of the Altepetl and its similarities with the structure of the oracle. Also, we need to take in account that this oracle has um, some elements of syncretism, since we have been for 500 years having this syncretism with the three roots of the um, Mexican culture and the Mesoamerican culture, and also most of the continent has these three roots: the indigenous, the Spanish, the Spaniard, and the African. Um, when the Spaniards came here, they had this idea of the four corners of the world, and they knew that there were different parts of the world that had their customs and their traditions and their ways of living: Africa, Europe, Asia, and America. We had a very early syncretism. This this meme is about this early syncretism, but it really happened the moment they started stepping on America. The Spaniards started stepping on America, um, when they got to the continent, not when they got to Cuba or the Caribbean islands, but when they got to Yucatan and Veracruz. And I'm going to talk a bit about that because the Spaniards captured some indigenous institutions. They started to educate the noblemen of the originary people. They ended the imperial cults. They killed the priests. They re-educated the elite. So it's a fantasy that when we try to look for the cults of Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca and Tlaloc, and all these cults have disappeared in time, but we have elements of that. One of them is the corn reading. So we have certainty that this is still a living tradition. There's a persistence of these local agricultural related cults, and some Spaniards defended these bits of religion or these syncretic parts of the Mesoamerican religion, calling it costumbre, not calling it religion, like calling it custom, tradition, and saying that this was apart from the religion. So they like tune down the aggressiveness towards these practices. And we have also magic brought from Spain and Portugal that influenced the magic here. And I'm trying to make another presentation about the broad beans that was magic brought from Barcelona and some other parts of Spain, and it's almost ready. Also, the enslaved people brought to the New World had a very great influence in America. Also, the system of castas, but we can talk about this in more detail uh, in another moment. So we can see, so the empire, the dominions of Philip II in 1598. So uh, we know that we started to have this, not globalization, but we started to be in contact with ports all over the world. Not only the people that had the resources to do it, but also there was forced mobilization, not just for the enslaved Africans, but also for even some magicians that were brought to the Catholic Church to be judged. So we have failed expeditions. Also, not everything was uh, glory for the Spaniards. Uh, they sent all these um, specialists, military, religious, engineers, administrative people that brought all the information from the old world to the new world. Uh, and we had the result of that was a modification of the souls, the bodies, and the riches, and all these violence and exchange of merchandise, because the Spaniards were very interested in trying to find all these India spices. And some people say or think that this was kind of a joke, that spices were very expensive. They still are. And also they made an experiment of um, producing sugar in Cuba, and they try to do it here in Mexico, and we still have a big production of sugar here, even in Veracruz, in Jalapa, like 40 minutes away. You can start to see that sugar is still produced here in a big way. And you see, maybe in some other time we can talk also about the cultural appropriation, because some people are worried about it. I am worried about it. But you see, there were people that loved the culture of Mesoamerica and learn to love Mesoamerica the hard way, like Gonzalo Guerrero, who was the first one to have a mestizo son. He survived one shipwreck in Yucatan when the Spaniards were trying to reach anything in America. They didn't know what to expect. And years after Gonzalo Guerrero and his partner Aguilar got to Yucatan, they learned the language. They learned Maya, and one of them joined Cortés in the mission, and the other one didn't want to go back to Cortés since he was married to a Maya girl. She was from a very powerful family. And then Gonzalo Guerrero had 3 kids, and he ended his days fighting against Cortés. He followed Cortés to Honduras and defended the Maya, the Maya culture, not the Maya Empire, because they had like several cities and they didn't have like a unity like the Aztec Empire. But he defended his Maya people. And also about these ideas about the outside world, the Spaniards introduced the hatred for Islam, and this went as far as to be represented in this uh, Edo period map. And as we see, we had all these mobilizations. I'm going to show you 2 more examples, and then I'm going to try to move on. We have this example of Maria Barbosa. She's an example of involuntary mobility. She was a mulata. She was a daughter of um, a black and an indigenous woman. She violates ecclesiastical principles, and she relates Europe, Africa, and America, because through her life, she was um, judge in Portugal, in Europe. Then she was sent to Angola, and in Angola, she was a madam and she practiced spells. Um, then she crossed the Atlantic. We don't know how or why. How could she do that? And then she was prosecuted, sent to the south of Brazil, where she was. Then she was handed over the Inquisition to Lisbon or Lisboa, and the ship fell into the hands of pirates. We are in the area of conflict and the age of conflict with England also. Spain and England are fighting over the not the colonies or not the territory, but the commerce through the Atlantic. And we have to think about all these histories on ships on the sea, and we have like a very big um, blank space that we don't study or we don't see really well in the world history. She's one of these examples. Also, Diego Chino, he's also an example of this mobilization, slavery, not only in Africa, but that took a route to Asia, how the Pacific was being crossed during the this area, this age. I mean, the mestizaje and the intercontinental of the magics and the Inquisition. So he basically traveled a lot. He was slave of some people that was in the Real Audiencia, which were the most powerful people in Spain at the time. He married an India from Metepec, which is the center of Mexico. He then enriches himself gambling, opens a shop, goes to Michoacan, and then he still practices magic with um, with people that give him some magical powders. Okay. Now, I told you all that because we need to see that this is not going to be a pure and immaculated practice. We need to see that we have been 500 years under this mestizaje, this mixing of cultures and genes and bodies and traditions. Um, and as contemporary example, this is a Mije woman, which is about to read the Maize. This is a photo by Victor Gayol, and she has the copal. She's offering copal, and she has a bottle of Corona beer, but she has mezcal inside this bottle. She's offering copal and mezcal to the spirits so she can read the corn, or maybe she's offering to help uh, save the person if the person that went to have the reading is sick. Okay, we have here, we have this idea that only the only the peyote and the ayahuasca are sacred plants, sacred vegetables, um, sacred natural powers, but in Mesoamerica, one of the most sacred uh, plants is the maize. It is the sacred seed, just as in Asia it is the rice, and in Europe is the wheat. So we have that the maize is the real food. It is the material of the humanity's flesh. Quetzalcoatl took this maize, stole the maize from a mountain with the help of Tezcatlipoca. Here is Tezcatlipoca making the earth, making Zipactli to come near him, and then uh, in consequence, the earth comes near the gods, and then they pull out the corn. So there's a legend of Quetzalcoatl that stole the corn from the mountain, turning into a little ant, and gave it to the humanity. The humanity didn't have any uh, ideas about agriculture and any arts, any architecture. They didn't know about poetry, singing, philosophy, and Quetzalcoatl gave the humanity most of that. And but one of the greatest gifts was the corn. So we're going to pass to um, an important word, which is Chicawalistli. The corn, it is the representation of the Chicawalistli. This is the force that we can lose and retrieve with the help of the oracle and the shaman. And we are going to give you, we're going to read and see a few more definitions of that. Why does the person want to go with the corn reader? Because they want to find an answer. They don't want tetzawit, which is a bad omen, trauma, congelation. Most of the time, the people know that there's something wrong with them, and they try to look for help. And this is one of the ways you can call this bad spiritual situation, the tetzawit. With these ideas of Chikawalistli as force and the Tetzawit as a bad omen or a disease or a bad feeling about uh, being sick, we have different forces that are secondary to this oracle, which is the Itonal. It is the force that comes with us to this world. It is impregnated by the moment in which we were born. It is the life of organs. The itonal, it's kind of like what we can read in astrological chart, astrological birth chart. The Nahual is the energy double. It is the aura, the ego of energy. It is equated to an animal. Has to do a little with the tonal because the tonal is marked by a day, and sometimes this day is related to an animal and a number. But the Nahual is different, and we are not going to talk much about that. And what is more important, it is the Chikawalistli, which is the force that lies everywhere inside of us, in the nature, everywhere. There are other forces like Hiyot and the Teyolia that live in some other organs. So the Chikawalistli has these etymologies. It is the breath, the strength, it is a salutation, it is a betterment in when you have a pain or a sickness. La force du courage against again is the strength, virtue by strength and effort. It is getting old gives you chicawalisli because when you get old you become an abuelito, an abuelita, you become wise. And a modern definition would be the mutual workforce, demonstration of love, respect, strength, energy. When you have a collective work with people who are offering it, uh, from their hearts, it is Chikawalisli. The communal spirit is Chikawalisli, and I said the force of old age is Chikawalisli also. So it is biological, psychological, social wealth that you acquire as a person and as a collective. Also, in some uh, towns in Mexico, there's still uh, well, it's not a problem. It is a problem for the Catholic priests, not for the people. That the people think that Christ and the Son and the Santissimo, it is the Chicawak, and they make the analogy of Christ with the Son. So when they have the sacrament and they eat the body of Christ, they compare Christ to the Son. Objects with Chicawalisli. This is an image of um, the implements of a Maya reader. We don't use the same way of reading, just like the Mije woman in the other picture, where we are seeing different techniques. If we had a 777 page about the Chicawalisli, it would contain this stuff saying that it contains and are related to Chicawalisli. So these are things that have a lot of life power. And one of them, two of the most important are the in Xochitl, in Cuicat, which is flower and song. It is a concept. It is poetry, poetry, singing, uh, giving entertainment and happiness through poetry. It gives Chicawalisli and the jade, which is called the chalchihuite. So the objective of reading the corn is to recover the tonal, feed the Chicawalistli, heal the Nahuatl. You see all these spiritual bodies that we have. We need to retrieve the force that we lose when we get hurt, when we get scared, when we are failing in life, are failing to feed our own life. Uh, Sometimes this damage is done by supernatural powers. The tonal is damaged by the owner of a place. Sometimes it's the owner of the hill, the owner of the water, the owner of the desert, the owner of some place that we are hiking through or that we are not respecting. And the four corners, okay. Uh, we have these four corners in the paliacate. The four corners have different names. You don't have to name them like this. You just have to know that they correspond also to the four classical Greek elements. Huehueteotl, which is fire, Tlaloc, which is water, Tezcatlipoca, uh, which is the earth, and Quetzalcoatl, which is the air. If we go um, through, um, if we go to, uh, we'll say up or down the Paliacate, we'll see that there's a cold place or a warm place. And this has to do with a very complex reading about if the disease is cold and you have to apply warm um, warm things, or the disease is warm and you have to apply cold uh, cold things. This is the paliacate. I made this just for illustrating the order, but the circles in the paliacate are not concentric. So I'm just going to explain this about the paliacate this way. In the outer circle, you have to read the rights of culture. If you if the corn falls in this outside circle, green circle, it doesn't need to be green. Uh, it means that you are not respecting the rights of your culture. You have to do something about that. Most of the time, it's what we call as telemites the all these rights of time, all these rights of the turning of the seasons. And there's the circle that means culture and symbols. You are not respecting culture or symbols, or some of these culture and symbols have inflicted you harm because I don't know, you mistreated the symbols and the culture you belong to. Then there's the community and the patron saint in this circle. This is a complex matter. The community or patron saint represents the town where you live, represents the also the people of your town. For example, well, you have to have a physical patron saint. You need to have a physical patron saint, and this patron saint needs to be taken care of. If the clothing of this patron saint is dirty, then there's going to be poverty in the town. If an eye from the patron saint falls, then a leader could die, could get sick and die. If the toes of this patron saint are broken, then maybe children will get sick and might die also. So this has this connection with this very uh, physical idea of the relationship between the patron saint, which is mainly in churches and and little chapels in towns, and the health and wealth of the town they correspond to. Then there's the circle of the family, and this has to do with all the family related trauma or prohibitions of the family that might harm you, but also about you not respecting your family. And also, sometimes uh, when you talk about this circle, it's uh, we with this occidentalized education can understand all this because of Sigmund Freud and other psychologists that accept all this idea of our relation with our parents is um, affecting, ruling, or influencing many parts of our lives. Then there is this other interesting part, the gods of destiny, which is a smaller circle. All these circles need to be the uh, same thickness, but not this one. The gods of destiny, it's a very thin one. This means that you have to consult another oracle, which is the oracle of the days. and you need to return to study the day that you were born, all the signs that were given you because of the date that you have of birth, and has to do with that. And then the central circle, it's the relationship with the divine, with God, with uh, it could be a relationship with nature, but also uh, with the unity, with the, it's called in Nahuatl the Tloquenahuaque or Ipalnemoguani, which is the kind of the all father or the creator. So this is the structure of the Paliacate, and on the right, uh, this is an idea of what could be the three-dimensional uh, Paliacate, because this is a hill, this is a mountain, and this mountain has some levels. Some might be more important to you than to others, but the thing is that this is the same thing as the Altepetl. It is the same thing, has the same structure. It is a hill that um, has all these secrets inside of it, and it has this god in the axis. In this case, is Tezcatlipoca in the form of a jaguar, and this is just an example because most of the time the representation of the central god might be a solar one or just a green spot representing the Chicawalisli, which is the jade stone that represents life. And in many codex, in many codexes, we have this same structure. Now, the size and direction of corn. If you look closely to the corn seeds, you will see that it has uh, three sides. It's the back, and means that it is good. There's a blessing, there's life, there's possibility, and then the belly, that means difficulty and negativity. And then the corn, the corn seeds uh, have this pointy end, which can be used to read some other ideas. Okay? We have this representation of the falling of four small seeds, which mean intellectual and emotional work because it is representing like a half circle. It is talking about going inwards also, this intellectual and emotional work. And the other one at the right means work inwards. See? Um, there are several ways to read this, but I'm trying to explain the ones that are more related. Then in the down here, there's the work outwards idea. It is the corn is pointing outside the paliacate. There's this idea of encounter, of knowledge, of it is not fighting. This is not a sign of fighting. And when the corn falls other on other ones, there's pressure of some situations on one another. So we see that it is not only about reading one situation, it is considering if you have the urgency to finish some things before you solve the problem you wanted to bring to the shaman. When you read um, with many seeds, sometimes you get symbols like this. It is not very common, but I wanted to see the relationship between geomancy and these two signs. Here is Carcer, here is Via. This is from a 1600 text that says that a sick person went to the where no, not a sick person, a person who is taking care of a sick person wants to know if the sick person will heal. And if you get this sign, a space between the corn, then it's going to die. If you have this open road, then the sick person will heal. We have another examples, because when we lose the tonal, when we lose this life force, we can have ways to retrieve all this life force, but the we need the advice of the oracle. So we have like this in the down at the left. This is one of my favorites. Six in a circle means a spring, means a place of water, means the owner of the Altepetl, which is a spirit, the owner of the hill, the owner of the mountain. It's Achane. Achane is the spirit of the water. You have to ask the spirit of the water to retrieve the tonal, to return the chicawalisli to the person, to let this person go healthy and with with his or her power restored. We have another example of animals to be sacrificed when people use crystals. The number of crystals next to the number of grains next to the crystals will determine the number of the animals to be sacrificed. But this is very advanced technique, and we don't know how to use this. It's just in the records of these proceedings. So we have another example of a wedding ideal situation. The couple is looking to the same direction, and all the family or the people invited to the wedding, it's looking to the couple, and they are in the position of health and possibilities and abundance and wealth. This is a situation that we have to pull out of the as a problem. If we have this grain on the couple, then it represents or might represent health problems. See, health problems, it means health problems because it is like a dead grain. See, if we have the white spot upside, then there's an excess of life. So this excess of life might result in carnal lust and might represent infidelity or problems of money. They are giving the money away. It's a more complex situation. There's Here is another way to read the four corners. You need to pull uh, 3 or 7 seeds, 3 or 7 grains in each corner, and you need to have at least 3 seeds to receive the blessing of the deity in each quadrant. And I'm going to show you which deities are here. Here is Tlaloc. Here it means that you have the blessing of Tlaloc. It means that you will have, if you have projects, then you are good to go. If you are asking for your sons, they're going to be okay. Here's Tezcatlipoca. He's not giving the blessing. When Tezcatlipoca is not giving the blessing, he is going to tell you, don't do that black magic you are getting into, or don't do that travel you were trying to do. Then Quetzalcoatl not giving the blessing would be, you need to take care of your ancestors. And Huehueteotl, the fire god, would be giving the blessing, but this would be like a future blessing. Like the time is blessing you, you just have to be patient. This is just a quick sample. Okay, I don't think I have much more time, so I'm going to finish explaining the non-humans um, that influence this oracle. We have, I already explained the Santos, the the patron saints. The patron saints um are not just images of these discarnated uh, bodies that are going to talk to God and talk to the town and be intermediaries between God and men. They live in men, they live in the town, they represent the town, and they are the brethren. So the body of these patron saints need to be taken care of. So the town will be in the same conditions. The other ones are the owners, which are kind of like the old uh, genies of the places, the old gods of the places. They own the places. They are not called gods or spirits in many Mesoamerican traditions. They are called owners, dueños. They own the mountains, they own the animals, they own the water. They have several names. Most of them own very important things like water and the hills, the elevations, and they get mad if you disrespect nature. So they directly punish you if you are not being respectful or going with care through the nature. There are another ones which are the heirs. They are less civilized than the Tlaloques. The Tlaloques are the owners of the water and the owners. Sometimes the dead become heirs. When a shaman dies, this is from a comic that I found, but I gave uh, I thought it was like I thought all this was really true. When the shaman dies, the people have to do a bunch of rituals through months, sometimes years, so the shaman doesn't stay in this plane, because the shaman could be a very bad discarnated body. They could turn into an air, go back to nature, and then get people sick. And if you get sick by a shaman, it would be uh, certain death. So they don't want to have magical magical dead humans going around in this plane. So they need to erase them from the history of the town and place them in 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 a transition to the higher planes. And then the death This is a really complex and alive tradition. We need to consider the otherness and difference of resources in the way that when you see a carnival in Mexico or you see a festivity in Mexico, you will see that people dress as animals and humans, but they are never dressed as indigenous, or they are dressed as the owners, they are dressed as Spaniards, they are dressed as people that are not them. They are trying to relate to the otherness of the foreign and strange people through the festivity. They are trying to break the order of the universe through the carnival and become the other one. So um, maybe we can talk later about what you need to do when you assume that you want to read corn, because you need to take action, um, and you need to respect uh, the way that other people is doing this. This is an altar of a shaman, which is a rezandero, a, mm, a prayer healer, and he has stuff like Coca-Cola, which is very accepted by the spirits in 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 many altars in Mexico. Even in Chiapas, it's kind of like money for the uh, for actual people and for the spirits. And when you try to start reading the corn, you need to negotiate, exchange, and respect with humans and spirits. See, I'm going to let you with this. This is transmission. It is what the person who taught me how to read the corn gave me. This is almost literally what she let me copy from her book, um, and this is what you need to make as a commitment and know about becoming a shaman or a corn reader. So I think you can consult this in the video, read it, and consider it. And above all, you need to respect corn, respect the original uh, languages, traditions of this continent. And well, I think I'm going to finish my exposition here. And thank you very much. Love is law, love under will.
That was awesome. That was absolutely fantastic. And I know you mentioned during that you were working on another presentation on the broad beans. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's magic from Spain. It was brought
Okay,
from Spain in the 1600s.
that's
Yeah,
awesome. I would love it if whenever you're ready, just let me know and we'll get you on for that. And like I said earlier, if you want to do a second part of this, we'd love to set that up with you as well. Um,
yeah,
do you have time for a Q&A if anybody has any questions that they'd like to
yeah,
ask?
sure. I'll
Okay,
try to answer questions if you have any.
okay. Yeah, if anybody has any questions at this point, let's open it up for Q&A.
Hi, Felipe. Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to leave the camera off because this thing's recorded. So on a previous slide, you had pictures of corn, beans, and squash. Um, And I know just in my travels throughout Mexico, they've kind of mentioned how, those three foods offered, a very balanced diet, right? And were sort of essential in, those really like important building blocks in the culture. And then
Yeah.
I noticed in the slide that you had the Mayan kind of reading, those were beans, right? And so did do we see like a divination with like squash perhaps, or was there, one, and two, was there conscious awareness on behalf of the people that, I mean, obviously in the case of corn, that these what anthropologists view as important building blocks were also kind of seminal to their own development. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, Corn, beans, and squash. Yeah. Corn is the main name of this oracle, but in Yucatan, in Merida, uh, they use beans, and most of the time they use these beans that cannot be eaten. They are poisonous. They are these red beans, and also the squash has to do with something very important. The squash, it is representing water. So when we're trying to heal through through the corn reading, most of the time it has to do with with water. The squash um, has different uh, mm, has a part in this healing. See, there's a story of a Mayan poet that says that grandpa was really sick. Grandpa was sick and he couldn't move, so he couldn't go to the shaman with us. And we needed to go to the house of the shaman and ask, why is grandpa sick? So the shaman took the squash. In this case, I don't use a squash to throw the beans. I use an abalone, but it is symbolically the same thing. So the shamans sung inside the squash, and they gave uh, gave to the gave to their grandfather to drink water inside the squash that had this this poetry and this song and this beauty about the world. And grandpa started to sing and dance in the next few days. So the squash, it's a representation of the water. It is similar to the jade because we're not talking about um, what we call the Castilla squash, which is the yellow squash. It is another squash. It is a green squash, a round green squash that looks like jade, like this one, like this small one. It represents water. It represents healing. It represents the solidification of the soul of the itonal of the Chicahualistli. It is the solidification of this medicine. So you can in the Mesoamerican tradition, you can heal the people just with singing, water, and simple things like looking for a clear recommendation through this oracle. So all these three elements, all these sacred plants uh, are part of this system. See, am I answering?
No, no, that was very helpful. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to add really briefly, when I was in San Juan Chamula, I know you had that the picture of the church. They had a banishing
Yeah,
ritual with Coca-Cola, which I thought was kind of
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. San Juan Chamula. I wanted to this talk. The first time I gave it, it was like 3 hours long. Then I tried to make it 2 hours long. So I'm missing a lot of points there, like this San Juan Chamula idea of syncretism, because they don't have a priest. They don't have a Catholic priest. They made they made the Catholic the priest leave the town like 15 years ago, I think, and then they painted all the all the church with their ideas of divinity. They have a jaguar and the stars and everything there. Sometimes they use Coca-Cola, sometimes they even sacrifice chickens,
Yeah.
and the floor is all with green grass. They put green grass in the and they are praying in Maya. They are praying in Maya. And it is very disrespectful to take a picture. And this picture is not mine. I've been there twice, and this picture is not mine. It was taken from the internet, but it is a very interesting and magical place. Yeah.
No, it really is. And just and they had said that the only sacrament that they still do is baptism, right? And it's because water is really important in Chiapas, but in Chamula. But it's in Chamula. That's why in the I guess in the east, I guess it would be like they have a picture of John the Baptist instead of Jesus, which is this is really like you said a very fascinating and very magical place.
Yeah. And it is really complex, and it is different in each town, and it is different. I'm talking about this technique in particular because the friend that taught me this, and then I tried to enrich this with anthropology. Um, uh, she she learned from a shaman who is the son of a Nahuatl shaman and a Maya woman, and they both read the corn, but they have different techniques. And this guy, this shaman that taught my friend, and then she taught me how to do this. um he tried to make like a fusion of these two techniques, and I've been only studying this like for the last year, so I'm trying just to explain to you that this exists, that this is important, and this is from Mesoamerica. It's not just from the Nahua or the Maya people. It's from every place that considered the corn sacred.
All right. Looks like we have a question in the comments asking if there is a recommended reading list that you might have for learning
Would
about
you recommend a
shamanism.
reading? Not really. I don't. I don't think I could recommend a reading list to learn about shamanism. Most of what I have presented you is like a synthesis of several anthropological articles and my own experience with people that um, are trying to preserve this tradition. And most of the shamanism books are not explaining any technique. They are just saying that this exists. They are not talking about the techniques. They shamanism is um, I don't know. I don't think there's a place to I mean a book to learn. I think there are places to learn in around Mexico City. In Texcoco, there are many places where you could knock on the door and ask to be taught. Even in the state of Mexico, and also, well, I don't know. It has to be face to face. It is really hard to find a book about this.
Oh, that sounds fair. All right. Well, do we have any last minute questions that anybody want to make it? If anybody has any questions they want to reach you with later, are you on any kind of social media or anything at all like that?
You could read. You could write to Azur Gemado encampment,
Okay.
Campamento Azur Gemado in Jalapa, Mexico. See,
Okay. Awesome.
you could write. We are in Instagram and Facebook, and I'll answer you, or the secretary will answer you.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've been in contact with some of the people down there. I'm trying to get a panel of initiates together to discuss how the work has been going down in Mexico. And at some point, I think that would make for a really, really cool presentation. Um, so I don't know if that was something that you had heard about or not, but at some point, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we don't have any more questions. Brother, I can't thank you enough for doing this tonight. Let's get talking about doing a part 2 follow up to this. And also, whenever you're ready with the future presentations, we'd love to talk to you about that as well.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you all for attending. Again, if you're ever just sitting around at home and trying to find something, the public events calendar of the Grand Lodge Education Committee, of the U.S. Grand Lodge Education Committee, always has a lot of links on there. And yeah, that's it. Thanks so much. And Brother Felipe, thank you again.
Thank you,
And
Scott.
Gracias,
yeah,
gracias, Felipe. It was great.
Thank you, Rafael. Gracias. Muchas gracias.
all right, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Love is the law, love under with.